Hello, Kathleen Kennedy. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank
I-
you.
I'm so excited to talk to you. I'm going to share a little bit about you with the listeners before we get started with our conversation. So, inspired by a high school teacher who saw her potential and believed that she had more to offer, Kathleen Kennedy has been and continues to be an advocate, leader, and champion for teachers, educators, and public schools. For over 23 years, she has counseled and coached administrators by providing solid communication advice and assistance with public relations. Kathleen found her true calling through her first school public relations leadership position at an Oklahoma technology center. From there, she led the communication team at Oklahoma City Public Schools as the executive director of communication, and after a heart-wrenching setback, began a journey running the Center for Communication and Engagement, a center specifically designed to assist schools without a communication professional and be a resource and additional team member to already stretched school communication teams. She has worked significantly with crisis teams to support communication efforts, including disasters such as the May 20th, 2013 tornado in Mork, Oklahoma, that struck 3 school buildings during the school day and killed 7 children. Kathleen has also used her talents to help school districts get the necessary resources to meet student needs, including over $1 billion in resources for teachers and students by helping to pass bond issues and tax referendums. In addition to her PR and communications firm, Kathleen has a Masterclass Leadership podcast series for educators that covers all things school communications, and she helps educators who want to advance into leadership through communication coaching. With all these roles, the most important leadership role Kathleen has is being a mama to her beautiful 11-year-old middle school girl. So welcome to the podcast, Kathleen.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy you are here. Is there anything you want to add before we start our conversation?
No, I just I was like, whoo, some days I feel like I'm not that old to have that much experience. And other days I'm like, no, you're that old. Like you got and then, or I walk back into a meeting and I'll with friends and like in associations that I've been
Mhm.
in, and they're like, let's ask our veterans. And I'm like looking around, I'm like, oh, that's me now.
Shoot.
And I mean,
I've
like,
not got that
yeah,
role.
I know. So yeah, I have a few years underneath my belt, but I've never stopped learning and growing. And I think that's so fun too,
Oh,
right?
that is. And that's like one of the things that we have in common is that we just love to learn and grow. I
Mhm.
love learning. I read a lot of books. I know you do because when I've been around you, you are always recommending so many great books. But we also have in common a passion for kids in schools.
Mhm.
I've been a school board member for over 8 years now in our school district and love it. Love just championing for kids and providing the best for the kids. But we also have a middle school daughter, so all of this life stuff is great to share with. But as we get started here, I know that you have a lot of books, but is there any books or is there any actions that really triggered your leadership journey? Because your journey has all been about leadership.
Wow. So I look back and I've been involved in leadership in some form or another since like a high school teacher kind of saw that ability in us and had higher expectations for us. But then friends got me involved in leadership Norman, where I live. It's like a local leadership level. And then I led leadership, or was involved in different leaderships here and there. But um I really like transformed my life a couple years ago. But it began with reading one single book, and it was a pivotal moment, because not only did they offer the book offer like the most amazing insights, but they had a community where they were growing leaders on a different level. And I dove into that. I dove in with a coach. I dove into it in the behind the scenes, and it was my first introduction into the world of leadership and more of a higher accountability and
Mhm.
different look at it. And it started with the One Thing book. And
Yeah.
I I know that's on our topic for today, but it was like a game changer for me, right? And
Mhm.
that was really then, and I also kind of fell into Rachel Hollis's community back when she was thriving in her first run at leadership and developing entrepreneurial leaders.
Mhm.
And I just there's just so many influences like that. But the one thing was the catapult for me into a different type of leadership where I am like in my most, I guess, natural state of
Mhm.
being. For
Yeah,
me
yeah.
is it is natural. It is a push to be my authentic self every single day.
Oh, that's awesome. So the one thing is by Gary Keller, right? I think
Yes, the
that
one
book.
thing.
And
Mhm.
so, yes, I mean, that is such a huge book. Is there anything in particular about like that stands out? I mean, there's so many good things in that book. Is there something that really stood out that stays with you in what you're
Yeah,
doing?
for sure. And it's finding that one thing that makes everything unnecessary. Like, you've got tasks or whatever you do that's in your job and that you have to do, right? But
Yeah.
where's the one thing that drives the majority of your business and makes you the most money and that makes you the most successful or sets everything else up so that it just becomes it like dominoes and they fall into
Mhm.
place. And that was for me learning that was, oh, yeah, you go back to your roots, right? Like
Right.
that's where you go every time. If you fall off and something's not working, then you're probably not following that one thing, right? And so, and then fast forward, I have another mentor leader that I've worked with, and her thing is focus time, right? So
Mhm.
when I marry those two together,
Oh,
it
yeah.
has changed the game for me. And so it's like, whew, yeah, all systems are firing right now. Like, and I have a dedicated spot on my calendar now for focus time on my one thing.
That's awesome. Like, can you dive into that just a little bit more? Because I mean, I feel like people, I struggle with this. I mean, I go back and I read, okay, I get this. I need, one thing and the focus time, whether you call it focus time, batch time, you're
Right.
just, you're kind of really spotlighting what it is that you want to work on and creating that time and space for it. Can you give an example of how that works in your life or,
Mhm. Yeah, I will. I will actually show you. I wonder if it'll show with my background because I have it actually written out
Oh, awesome.
on a big spreadsheet.
Okay. Well, I can't quite see that because it just blocked
Okay.
you.
So I'll tell you, I
Okay.
keep it up and I actually measure what my progress is,
Okay.
right? So in my focus time, um, where are the things that are giving me the most value for
Mhm.
being seen and for me to, so I guess it all goes to your vision. You have to know what your vision is for your life, right? And mine is to make a difference in public education. Mine is to be a game changer for kids.
Mhm.
Right?
Yep, yep.
Ultimately, I believe that public education is one of the greatest resources for our children,
Mhm.
no matter, where you are in the world. In the United States, this is a game changer for us, right? It's a free
Right. Yeah,
resource. Now,
yeah.
free is the variable. But my calling is to serve educators to make them better leaders
Mhm.
so that they provide the very best education, right? Like that's my gift. My
Yeah.
gift is to help change and transform leadership so that it impacts kids all over, right? And that's
Mhm.
the way we're going to change it. So what do I do in order to get that message out, right?
Mhm.
So I own a communications and PR business, right? I have a podcast. I have a masterclass video series that I deliver free, like uplifting content with. And then I also coach educators who want to be leaders and who want to be a better communicator.
Mhm.
So all of those things kind of work together, but where do I get the most value? Well, I've always gotten the most value by speaking, like by
Yep,
public speaking, right?
yep.
People don't know that I exist. So unless you're out there
It's true.
beating on doors and knocking on doors and getting yourself a place to speak. So for me, that is where I have the biggest return on my investment. Like I just went last week to go speak at a room full of superintendents. And they also asked me to pay to play, right? Like they're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
will you sponsor our breakfast?"
Right,
And then
right.
all of our administrative assistants are meeting in the other room. Would you sponsor theirs too? Sure, because I believe so much in what I'm doing and the benefit is in the long run, that I know that that will pay out. Well, I've already sent a contract to one of those school districts now because they're like, oh, we should be working with you. You know,
Yes.
and
Yes.
that was within 3 days after that meeting, right? Like, so
Wow.
it's like a
Yep.
flip. I've met with them in person, send them a contract, and they're going to sign the contract next Monday at their board meeting.
Nice.
So that is an example of focused time. I put it on my calendar to call all of these groups that have superintendent meetings because I'm fine tuning where's my audience. My audience are getting in front of superintendents and leaders in education,
Mhm.
and where do they meet? And so I've that's what I do daily. I get on my calendar and I
Mhm.
look for leaders. I look for opportunities to go speak and curate those. Um, and so is that also in a podcast? Yes, it is, right? It could be in a podcast through someone who's already on a school board, right? Like
Right.
you. Or it could be with other school PR professionals, and I've done 2 in the last month where, well, we're in November, it was October, but right?
Yeah.
So I'm working in areas where I know there's going to be a value and an impact
Mhm.
where my ultimate vision of impacting education can be met. And so I think that's that focus, right? That's my
Mhm.
one thing. For
Yep.
me, that is my one thing, and it's an example of how it's working.
That's awesome because I know that you started out with this vision, and I think people, sometimes we focus in on the wrong things because we don't know what our vision is, and
Mhm.
we can. There's a lot of distractions, right? And
Always.
so there's so many distractions, but if we start with what our vision is and then focus in on the tasks, on those one things each and every day that
Mhm.
can move us closer to achieving that, like
Makes
laser focused.
Oh, yeah, it makes everything else fall away, right? But
Yeah.
you can't ever get comfortable, and I'll tell you, I got comfortable, and I was like, "Ah," and you let it slide, and then some of those contracts fall out, right? Or, the coaching piece for me is developing, and it's new, and I'm
Mhm.
nurturing that because I've seen a need to 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 grow leaders from the classroom level and
Mhm.
having different conversations. I mean, we're working with educators and they are retiring, right? Like, or
Yeah.
they're just saying, I've had enough because the political landscape in education is hard right now, right?
Mhm.
And
Yep.
in the United States, it is challenging. And so through my master classes, I'm pouring life into them with joy and resources that fill their souls, not necessarily professional development as it relates to their classroom, but to
Right.
fill up their cup so that they're not on empty. Then my coaching is transformational and it's moving them in a different way so that they can look at education and they can have conversations that are different than the people around them. We're not getting into what I'd say like the um, staff faculty lounge,
So,
the
yeah. Yep.
gossip, those conversations aren't helping us move our mission forward, right?
Right.
And I would say that brass tacks, when you get down to it, most schools have the same mission, right? Like no matter who they are, right?
Yep.
And so it's just so important to change that leadership conversation
Mhm.
and moving that in a different direction. So that too is like every time I'm out there speaking, and now I'm doing trainings too for leadership, and it's so exciting, right? Like that is
Right.
it all boils back down to my mission.
It does. And what's interesting is what you were talking about, you're helping educators, fill their cup, which I mean, if we are running on empty, like
Mm,
we can't run. Like
no,
we don't do well. And
no
when
one
life
does.
seems like yeah, when life is just like, oh, we need something to build us up, which doesn't necessarily mean we need more of work related stuff.
Mhm.
Right. So what are some things that like can fill not only teacher's cup and educator's cup, but like
Yeah,
everybody's cup?
yeah.
Talk about.
Well, that's so great because a lot of times in our world in education, you have a lot of people who are so used to pouring into other people that they
Mhm.
forget to pour into themselves, and that's anywhere, right? It
Yeah.
depends on your level of performance and how high performing you are, but if you find those things that, and I would say someone challenged me to do this too, is like look at classes at your local technical school or online, like what are some things that interest you? Like
Mhm.
I'm sitting here noticing right behind you that beautiful flower arrangement, right? I love floral arranging. Like if you bring me a bouquet of flowers and I will sit and arrange it, I'll cut them to make them look beautiful. Like, so to go take a class on that would fill my cup, right? And it's filling it up with something totally different. So when I'm filling up cups, like I did a thing, I interviewed a guy on laughter yoga and I was like, what in the mercy is laughter yoga, right? I slept like a baby that night because I had released so much,
Yeah.
and all these amazing endorphins were now in my body filled, and I've really nenever slept so great in my whole life.
Oh
And
my gosh.
so it's like finding these new things that they may stretch you, they may just nurture you, that help you feel better. Like that's what you need to do to, what is
Mhm.
it? Recharge. I sometimes just taking a walk,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It is putting on some music and getting up and walking around your house if you can't go outside, right? There's
Mhm.
just different ways to challenge yourself and your
Mhm.
body and your mind. Listening to podcasts while you're getting while I'm in the shower every morning, I'm
Yeah.
listening to a podcast because that's where I fill some of my cup because my
Mhm.
cup comes from learning. I
Mhm.
I like to learn. And so I love a good and then I drive all over. So I'm also listening to books a
Yes,
lot. I
yes,
know
I
you know
know
that,
I
right?
mean, that's something that we
Yeah,
have in common because
yeah,
anything that we're like, we're constantly trying to learn, I'm
right.
on the road,
Yeah.
whether mine is more like kids activities and,
Uh-huh.
on that or first thing
Yeah.
in the morning, I go for a walk if it's nice outside and
Mhm.
I'm plugging into something inspirational and motivational or something
Yeah.
that I'm learning. And
And
so,
some days I just wanna hear music when I'm
yeah,
walking, and
oh,
that's fine, right? Like,
sometimes I don't want to hear anything.
yeah. Oh, because you've got too much in the house. I get that. But it's just there's so many opportunities to take to pour into yourself. And sometimes, you know what? My dad passed away a couple months ago, and
Mhm.
I'm not been typically very good at giving myself grace ever. Like I'm a get up, get rolling, get moving kind of
Mhm.
person, right? I'm
Mhm.
always moving and I don't let myself feel. And I think it is okay to sit in and then feel and allow yourself the grace in the moment to
Mhm.
let your emotions happen. So for me, that's looking different nowadays where I'm like, I am gonna sit and watch a TV a
Yeah,
mindless whatever it is, who knows?
yeah,
HGTV is usually what I land on,
yeah,
right? Or
something inspirational.
it has been some Hallmark, Christmas movies that they seem to be playing year round, right? But
Right.
I have just shown myself more grace, and that is also, I think, something that is helpful in just pouring into yourself, right? Like, it
Yeah.
has allowed me to, um, just be in the moment.
And I think that's, being in the moment is something that I think we kind of forget how
Mhm.
to do.
Yeah.
Life is full of stuff that comes to us in all directions. And we need that time and space to just sit, process.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
mean, we can't move forward, we can't even know what our vision is unless we sit and process what it is that we really want.
Yep.
How are we going to find these things? How are we going to stretch ourselves if we don't take that time
Mhm.
to just sit and like, what is it that I want? Ask the questions,
Mhm.
and so to
Yeah.
be able to, how do you fill your cup? Well, you gotta figure out what it is, like what's interesting to you.
Mhm.
And there's
Mhm.
so many different things, and it's just
Yeah.
amazing that, it's everybody needs it.
Oh, yeah, everyone deserves it to give back to themselves, right?
Right,
So,
to take care of yourself, to fill yourself up so that
uh,
you can overflow your joy to somebody else.
oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, I I have a word that I pick every year. That
Okay,
was
yep,
the you know, um, that's John Gordon, right? The energy bus and he's amazing. I got to hear him this past September in person or maybe it was in August, but um and he was talking about picking your word, right, for the
mhm,
year and working you can even do it with your kids and your families and your
yep,
schools and wherever, and I've been doing it a couple year 3 years now, maybe 4. And this year my word is love, and it has just been manifesting in every direction, and it's also by allowing myself grace and feeling those moments and
mm,
being able to celebrate my dad before he passed away while he was still here, like
yeah,
big party when he
Oh,
came home
wonderful.
hospice. And it was just like, these are opportunities we don't get to give ourselves. And if you're not in the moment and you don't get, like you can't get those moments back.
No,
I
no.
think that's one of the leadership tenets I've learned in the last several years is life is now, right? And if you
Mhm.
don't take advantage of that, whether that's slowing down and feeling it or celebrating or whatever, but you've got to take advantage of it because we're not going to get those chances back.
No, no. It's in those moments is where the memories last.
Mm,
We can
mhm. Yeah.
memorable moments is something that I just want to create. And I love the words don't have to be, you know, too inspiring. I think it just be, love is something that whatever you want to make of it.
Mhm.
And it's like, oh, okay. Now it's like thinking, oh man, I gotta pick my next year's bird here soon.
Right? We're almost on it. But
you
I
know?
have shown up. I show up in love. How am I being love? How am I modeling love? Like those are all the things that when I'm looking back on my year and we're getting, we're wrapping up, right? And
Yep.
so it's the perfect time to look. And I met someone and I'm just like, oh, and I like, I'm surrendering to this. And I'm like, wow, I don't know if you know this, but I've never been married. So I am 51 and I have never been married. And I've also been very guarded and very,
Mhm.
standoffish. And I let lots of walls down and it's who I'm showing up, who I'm being is
Yeah.
I am being love and I'm also attracting love. And it's just like the whole year. I mean, granted that my dad is going to fill, there's a
Mhm.
giant void there,
Right.
but it is, I even got to show up for him in those and teach my family how to show up
Yeah.
in that last week when we were
Oh,
gifted with
yeah.
that week, right? We
Yep.
we
Yeah.
celebrated him and it was so beautiful and can't I would not be in this place without all the leadership that's brought me to this moment.
Right. All of our experiences has brought us up to this point.
Yeah.
And just when you open yourself up to learning but
Yeah.
also being intentional, a whole year of love. My gosh, how could that change the world?
Right?
I
Oh,
mean, it's changed your life.
100%. Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh,
Yeah,
yeah.
but it's that intention, right? It
Oh, it's
and it
very
goes
intentional.
back to one thing, like
Mhm.
one word,
One thing. Yep.
and it's extreme focus on that. Whether I mean, it's not like, "Oh, I'm gonna be loved today," it's not that, but it's
No,
like
you don't set out with that. Yeah, right?
it's
No.
just like, "Okay, I wanna show up
Mm.
exuding love in
Mm.
whatever I do," whether, that's
Oh,
with
yeah.
your daughter, with,
Oh, yeah.
coworkers, what,
Uh-huh.
life in general. You know, how could everybody find their word? Do
Right?
you have any suggestions?
Suggestions, yeah. Um, you know, I just really take a few minutes to reflect on the past and what my vision is moving forward, right? And then where I'm at, and I'm sitting here and I'm pretty much staring at the word I think I'm gonna choose for next year, which is so funny because I'm like, how do I, but you can even just look at words that resonate with you and
Mhm,
things that are in your life right now. Like, where are you? What are you feeling that you're called for, like in your heart,
mhm,
spiritually, mentally,
mhm,
leadership wise? Do you need to be challenged? Is it opportunity? Where is it that exists within you that you're feeling a tug, right?
mhm,
And if
yeah,
you're feeling the tug, it is probably the right way to go, right? It's what you need to lean into most. And
mhm,
sometimes that's where we find the most resistance. And for
right,
me, I can tell you that love was probably very resistant in that capacity. And I'm not saying that I don't love people, right? But
right,
it was
no,
different. It was being love.
yeah,
It was actually showing up as love for other people and not just like waiting for the love of my life to show up somewhere, which has never happened, right? And then randomly it just did. So I say randomly, but I'm pretty sure I sourced that right into my
I'm
life.
pretty sure you sourced
Yeah.
that, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I just say listen to your heart, listen to your mind, connect, put some time together,
Mhm,
when you're out on a walk, thinking about reflecting on the past, but also thinking forward. And like
mhm.
I'm almost positive if you check back with me like December 31st, my word's probably going to be possibility for 2024.
I mean, that's amazing. But I think, what I hear from you is just like, how do you find that? It's like that tug, like you said, there's something pulling you
Mhm.
towards something. And I kind of see it as like, oh, you kind of know what you need, but you're kind of, I don't know, but there's usually a word that draws out, and that's kind of like steering you in that direction.
Yeah, yeah. The other words that like there's a couple others that resonate with me too. Possibility is good, but abundance is also
Mhm,
another one that
mhm.
I've leaned in pretty heavily into. And abundance doesn't necessarily mean like wealth and like
Right.
what riches and whatever. It's abundance of everything, right? It's an abundance of love. It's an abundance of friendship and the meaningful right things in your life, right? You're
Yes.
creating in opportunities, and
Right.
it's how you show up. It is how
Mhm.
you live. It's who you're being. I get
Right.
back to that word of being, but
Mhm.
it's different than thinking it and being it.
Right. We can know something. We know a lot of things.
Mhm.
But it's the action part of being that
Oh,
is
verb.
a struggle for everybody that we have to kind of continually relearn, redo, and retry. And I think words create meaning individually for us. Like, we have our own definition of things. And when I work with people and they have they share some words, oftentimes I'm like, so what do you mean exactly by that?
Mhm,
Because like you said, abundance doesn't necessarily mean lots of things.
mhm.
It's a
Oh,
it's a feeling of, you know,
mm,
greatness of having a lot of something.
and
Love.
grateful for, right? Like you're
Mhm.
I mean, I have a gratitude practice every night with my daughter.
Mhm.
And before we go to bed, we always say 3 things that we're thankful for from the day. Like it is something we've done since she's been tiny.
Mhm.
And it's like if you miss a night and it is like she went to camp for a week and I wrote her notes like 3, for one for every night she was gone about like what I'm thankful for. And
Mhm.
it reminded her to do the same thing. It's like, okay, I can't not go without saying
Right.
those things. And
Right.
it was just so fun because it was the first time she'd really ever been away from home
Yeah.
for an
Oh
extended
gosh.
period of time. Yeah. But and I think gratitude is a huge, huge
Mhm.
part of leadership as well too, is to be thankful for failures, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
things that have not worked out, right? And
Yes.
what you're learning because everything is not just a failure, it's an opportunity to get better and to move forward. And
Right. Right.
that's something I've taken. And my dad taught me that a long time ago, like being fired from a job way back when. And,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and so, he told me about those and how they
Mhm.
change him and challenge him to be better moving forward. And you learn. And that's learning. If you
Yeah.
stop learning, you stop growing.
Right. Right. And I think, people put too much into meanings. A lot of people think the meaning of failure is bad, but
Hmm.
I totally think it's an opportunity to learn, you know?
Right?
And so, what'd you learn from that? Yeah, because there's so much to learn about different things. We don't want it to shut us down. We don't
No,
want it to
never.
turn off our light to do
No.
anything because, the world around us evolves because we create those opportunities to learn.
Yeah.
And so wonderful.
I know. It's so good. So good. Like it inspires me just to like sit and talk about it, right? Just
Yes.
because, you're like, oh, there's so many people you can learn from if
Mhm.
you sit and have a good conversation. I think that's the other thing is we get walled off now because of the political conversations people have, right? And
Mhm.
they're so like, ugh. And I know you know this, but I ran for school board here in our local area.
Yeah.
It was crazy, and the hatred and the vitriol, it was
Oh,
just profound. And I walked onto a doorstep and I had to then explain to my daughter what abortion was after I left, which had nothing to do with the school board decision, like,
right.
right? Like,
Right.
and I'm just like, whoo, yeah, well, you might want to vote for somebody else because I'm not on the far right or the far left. I am for the middle. I'm for the people who want to work together, who want
Yeah.
to find solutions and like so no. And I'm confident in saying I'm not for everybody. And
Mhm. Yeah.
that takes a leader, right? Like, it
Oh,
takes you
yeah.
knowing yourself and knowing that you can't be all things to everybody,
No, because then you're
nor
not
do I
gonna
want to
be
be.
anybody you're not gonna be anything for anybody.
No, yeah, right? So, I feel like but even having those conversations just really you took away from that, like, "Oh,
Mhm.
no, it solidified me in my spot on where I need to go and what I need to deliver to help educators move forward, right? Like it
Right.
just kept
Right.
reinforcing my mission of
Yes.
we need more leaders at a younger level to be
Mhm.
there, to have strong conversations and to know who they are and what they're about and what they're doing so that they don't veer from their mission either. We can't afford to lose any more teachers.
No, no, they're our most valuable resource for generations to come. And I
Right.
honor those that are in that position because it's a
Yeah.
tough job. It is a
Yeah.
really tough job. You mentioned, quite a few mentors, we can talk about, you talked about Rachel Hollis, you talked about the book One Thing by Gary Keller, and I know there's lots, and we can name some of those others that other people might know, but there's mentors all around us. Who else inspired you in your leadership journey?
Well, my dad has been and continues to be one of my
Yes.
number one champions, right? He when we were in the hospital, he didn't do a good job of ever telling us how proud he was, ever. Like
Yep.
that was just not his style.
Yep.
And but in the last week in the hospital before he came home, he would tell everyone that walked in the door, "This is my daughter and she's an amazing entrepreneur." Like I'm so proud of her. And like so my dad was a great businessman and I learned so much from him. I also was like this growing up like with him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think the personalities that you're similar with do this with your
Yeah, yeah, uh-huh. And then I see that in my daughter, and you're like, "Wow, it's so much fun to parent myself."
Yes, yes.
And now I know what it was like for my dad, right? But,
Yep.
but he was one, I just took away so many gifts of strength and humility and, just perseverance and hard work and doing things right the first time. And,
Mhm.
like there's so many lessons that I learned from him. He's one of my heroes. And then, I I love as a leader and somebody I learned from in my transformational leadership program, Michael Stroessner. He's a transformational leader. Um, he's amazing. And it's like you have to um be willing to dive into your childhood and uncover the limiting beliefs
Mhm.
that separate us from moving forward. And it's a lot of deep work. And I just am so inspired by him and by because until you have what it takes to uncover what's kept you from moving forward and leveling up, you're never going to be able to continuously take the risks you need to live the life you want to live and that you're destined to live and the one that the world is waiting for you to live.
That is so powerful. That is so very powerful.
Yeah.
Wish we
So
could put
he's
that on repeat, but but we
he's
all need to
amazing.
hear that. Yes.
Yeah, we need to hear that. And doing that requires work on yourself.
Mhm.
And then I like, it's like, okay, I've done it. Not only did I do it, then they asked me to come back and they asked me to coach it in the program that
Mhm.
I was in. And
Yep.
so I coached it. And then in the coaching comes more work than you did as a student. And I was like,
Oh,
how is that even possible? And then I got to go through and I got to see him, right? I got to see him as a student and then I
mhm.
got to see him as a coach. And then I was like, whoa, it is. It's like 10,000 times more you learn.
Yes.
And I went in, it was so crazy. It was so good. So he's one of my most amazing,
Mhm.
influential leaders that I've ever worked with. And then, there are people around me like you're who you spend the most time with, right?
Right. Right. Some days I don't wanna spend much time with me, but, I
No, it's you and I are a lot alike where we're constantly studying
Yep.
leadership and reading
Yep.
books and growing and stuff like that. And I've landed into a mastermind group that I call them my mastermind. We were in small groups in this
Mhm.
leadership transformation, but we've actually continued to meet and we meet every
That's
Wednesday
awesome.
morning at 8:30. It is on my calendar, locked in. I did it the
Mhm.
day after my dad died and like all these things. Like
Yep.
it's a space where I'm not gonna miss that because these women are living the life that I wanna like with the expectations, with high expectations, right? And
Huh?
goals,
Yep.
and we're moving. And so creating and being around leaders and people that are manifesting those things that you want to do in your life is a
Mhm.
space you need to keep yourself in. And if you're the smartest person in the room, then you need to leave. And
You
it's
need to
okay.
find a new group.
Yeah, you need to move. And same thing with hiring people like around you, right?
Yeah.
I'm not want to be the smartest person in the room. I'm hiring people that know way more than I do to do
Oh yeah.
things, and it
Yeah.
makes us better.
It does make us better. And there's no, downplaying that, because you need more people around you to stretch you and challenge you and just motivate you to be better. And if we're all in that together, learning, wanting to learn, wow, we can surround ourselves with whomever we wish that can
Yeah.
inspire us.
100%. I mean, I just it doesn't even have to be somebody that that can be a mentor, right? It could be
Mhm.
listening to a podcast from
Yep.
someone that you love. Like I love Tim Ferriss's podcast,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
He interviews the most incredibly smart people on the planet, I feel like. And
Mhm.
I loved his interview with Brene Brown, and it just there's so many people that you can grow from just
Yes.
listening to, right? You don't have to know them.
No, but you just have to take that step to go out and find
Uh,
something, find somebody that resonates with you that you can learn something from,
yeah,
and just take one little nugget away and make your life a little bit better that day.
right.
So, in closing, is there one little nugget that you would like to leave the listeners with today?
Mm, yeah. I think that the probably the best piece of advice I can give people would be is if you are hearing something inside of you, whether you know and can name it or not, because I was in that place of I've done leadership, I've done these things, but I just knew something was missing. Like I had like this void of something was missing. And I loved my life, right? Like I was doing okay. Things were going all right. And
Mhm,
I didn't know what it was, that I couldn't put my finger on it, right?
mhm.
That's something that's speaking life into you, and I need you to follow that. That is something that's telling you that there is more there for you than what you're in right now, and you just don't know until you walk inside and you uncover it. You got to be willing to follow that intuition and follow that calling, and that will lead you. I promise that leads to so much good stuff.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, the abundance of so
Yeah.
much good stuff.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Kathleen, for being on my podcast today. Hey, connect with Kathleen. Her website is www.ocok for Oklahoma, cce.com. And Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, find her, connect with her. If leadership, communication, she's all there. So go check her out and get her on a speaking engagement for your organization.